Alright, hello and welcome to a return to a fanfiction reading. Not really a return, hasn't been too long. I don't know what to say here. Another part of the fanfiction reading of Not Guilty by BrightBriar. So, we are on chapter 5, which means this is episode 5. No, chapter 6 / chapter 5, but we're looking at this. Magic 101. So, yeah, I don't know what to say right now. Um, I should probably just get a move on, get working on this. Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, let's just begin because I got nothing right now. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. here. 7 a.m. was earlier than Merrick would have liked, but given that Akira had saved his life minutes earlier, Merrick hadn't really been in a position to complain. The next morning he left Kaiba when the sky was still gradient of soft, warm color. Wrapped in every remotely warm piece of clothing that he owned, he caught the train at 6:15. Resting his head against the window, he tried to strike a balance between looking out of it and watching his breath fog it up. He had lost all of the items with him, although the more he thought about it, the more he wondered whether they had the potential to cause more problems than they solved. Oh, he had all of the items with him. Where did I see lost? Okay. He'd been up late, thinking about the vision he'd had during the funeral. All he could tell from it was that at some point, Akira either had been or would be in a courtyard in the desert. And given that the Millennium Items were involved, this desert was probably somewhere in Egypt. But he couldn't tell whether it was a vision of the past or of the future, or why it was even significant, why she was significant. He also hadn't quite made up his mind in terms of how much he could tell her. He would tell her about the shadow magic and the items for sure, given that she'd already seen him use the rod, and given that the vision suggested she probably had something to do with everything anyway, he would tell her about the possible connection to Tadako since he was her brother. If he was telling her about shadow magic, it seemed right to tell her that too. But he wouldn't go into too much detail about Battle City. There were some things about Battle City that would be better if no one talked about. Things that he didn't want anyone else to know. Things that he did. The thing he became. When he arrived at the park, Akira was already there, sitting on one of the benches. She wore lighter colors today. Her black coat had been swapped for a pastel hoodie, black jeans for pale blue with ripped knees. Her face was obscured by the cowl of her hood, staring at her shoes, deep in thought. He'd swallowed, anxiety rising in his stomach, not really looking forward to this conversation. But just for a moment, all of that melted away when he realized she brought a dog. The dog noticed Merrick first, huge, white, and somewhat resembling a marshmallow. It got to its feet and started wagging its tail as soon as Merrick approached, tongue lolling. Its black eyes shone with excitement. Merrick crouched down, grinning in kind. "Dog!" the dog barked, tugging on its leash. Akira looked up, her eyes flickering with recognition, meeting his gaze with a small smile. "Hey, Merrick." Merrick hardly noticed her. He'd only seen dogs up close a few times, and had never actually touched one, and Akira's dog was the most adorable thing he'd ever laid eyes on. Its pointed ears were pricked, its nose twitching as it trotted up to Merrick, tailed by Akira. The duelist glanced at Akira, hardly able to contain himself. Sure, he was grinning inexplicably widely. Is it okay if I pat him? Akira smiled softly, bemused. Yeah, sure. His name is Momotaro, but he responds to just Momo. Merrick beamed, kneeling down in front of Momo. Hey, Momo. Oh my gosh, you're so cute. Merrick broke off, his hand hovering above Momo's nose, unsure of where the best place to pat him was. Momo nudged Merrick's hand with his nose, and Merrick laughed. Hey! He really likes it behind the ears, just there. Akira grinned, giving him a scratch. Right on cue, Momo leaned into her touch, throwing his weight against her leg. Merrick's eyes widened, his mind racing to process how cute this dog was. He found himself using a tone of voice which both felt and sounded completely foreign to him, as though whatever was actually in his larynx had been replaced with sunshine and rainbows. Do you want me to scratch your ears too, Momo? Do you? Momo looked at Merrick as though he very obviously did, wagging his tail. Merrick hesitated, then pushed his fingers into Momotaro's thick fur. His eyes widened. Holy shit, it's so soft. Holy shit. Momotaro wagged his tail furiously as Merrick fondled his ears, warmth swelling in his chest, absolutely overwhelmed with the lightest, happiest feeling he could imagine. He glanced up at Akira, doing his best to act normally, as though petting a dog wasn't the single greatest thing he'd ever done in his life. So he's your dog? Uh, Akira's gaze went blank for a moment before turning dark. He is now. Merrick blinked, frowning. At least 80% of his mental capacity had still taken up with dog, 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 dog. And he realized. The light, happy feeling died away, and he swallowed, looking anywhere but her eyes. Oh, shit, sorry. It's okay, it's not your fault. Um, Momo looked between them, sensing a change in the atmosphere. He nudged Merrick's hand, a silent request for more patting. Only then did Merrick notice how tired Akira looked. There were dark shadows under her eyes, and her posture was hunched and stiff. The duelist swallowed, feeling awkward. Someone else making a mistake like that about almost any aspect of his childhood would shake him severely, but he wasn't sure whether Akira was the same. He didn't want to make anything worse, even though the nature of this entire conversation made that almost inevitable. Do you want to sit down and talk? Akira nodded, turning away from him. That'd be good. She gave Motaro's leash a little tug, leading him back to the bench she'd been waiting on before. Sitting down heavily, she pulled the bar of chocolate out of her pocket, breaking half. Want some? Merrick blinked, taking it. Yeah, thanks. Where'd you get it? She ducked her gaze, glancing at the frozen ground. Oh, I've always kept some on me as a comfort food since. Hey, down, Momo. This will make you sick. She snapped, whisking the chocolate away from the dog. Momo immediately looked at Merrick hopefully, his eyes round. He plopped his head on Merrick's lap and looked at him, and holy shit, Merrick knew puppy dog eyes were supposed to make you weak, but coming from an actual puppy dog, they were powerful. Still, he shook his head sadly, popping the rest of the chocolate in his mouth. Sorry, Momo, you can't have this. Akira nodded, giving Momotaro a quick pat behind his ears as if to say sorry. Anyway, about yesterday. Merrick swallowed. Yeah, yesterday. There was a short, slight, uncomfortable silence as Merrick tried to work out where to start. Kira broke it, speaking incredibly quickly. I'm sorry. I just have so many questions about so many things. I don't know if you want me to ask them or if you want me to just shut up so you can explain everything in an order that makes sense. And like I've been thinking about whatever magic you mentioned yesterday a lot, and I'm really sorry. I'm rambling, and I've hardly slept. Sorry. Merrick blinked. Akira, slow down. It's fine. Wait, sorry. I don't mean it's your fault I haven't slept. I was thinking about yesterday, of course, but I haven't slept properly since Sadako died, so she broke off, staring at nothing for a few moments before continuing. So I can't really blame you. My sleep schedule isn't your fault, not your responsibility. Forget I said anything. And I'm sorry I had to go yesterday. I was worried about my parents looking for me, and they were probably worried since I wasn't picking up the phone, and all of us have been really fragile since Tadako, and I didn't really want them to panic. I probably seemed all calm and tough yesterday, but I'm really not. I mean, you can probably see that now. I'm kind of a mess. Akira. Merrick placed one hand on her shoulder. She shrunk down into her hoodie, making herself as small as possible. It's okay. Akira looked at him, something in her eyes almost fearful. Panicking, she swallowed, taking a deep breath, gently removing Merrick's hand. She rolled her shoulders to release the tension in them. Right, sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. Okay, Akira bowed her head, folding her hands in her lap, her voice hard. It's been a rough few days. Merrick nodded. Do you still want to talk about everything now, since you're a bit... She met his eye, her gaze turning almost icy. Yes, why do you think I couldn't handle it at the moment? Merrick's eyes widened, taken by surprise by her sudden harshness. No, not at all. I just wasn't sure if you needed a few moments to breathe, like yesterday. Akira paused, her gaze softening. Right, sure. Sorry I snapped at you. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Akira was still for a minute or so. Momotaro lay down and rested his head on his paws, still wagging his tail. Finally, she looked back at Merrick. So what was up with that gold stick? Her voice shook slightly, as though deep down she already knew she was getting into some serious shit. Merrick swallowed, suddenly feeling nervous, praying to every god he knew that of that telling her everything was the right decision. It's called the Millennium Rod. It's one of the 7 Millennium items. Akira raised an eyebrow at him. The Millennium items? Yeah, that sounds like something out of some trashy fantasy novel, she said wryly. Wrong way around. I bet trashy fantasy novel magic is unconsciously stealing from the real stuff if you go back far enough. Uh, I guess so. Merrick shrugged. Anyway, the Millennium Items. There are 7 of them, and they come from ancient Egypt. With them, their wielders could harness shadow magic in order to play shadow games, either to prove one's strength or bring about some kind of justice. The loser of the shadow game was usually dealt some kind of penalty game. Penalty game? I said penalty game, and then Akira was like, penalty game? A supernatural punishment usually involving a coma or death. Oh, Merrick smiled grimly. Yeah, eventually the soul of an ancient pharaoh, Atem, became trapped in one of these items of the Millennium Puzzle. For thousands of years, the 7 items were protected by a group of people called the Tomb Keepers, who waited for the pharaoh's return. He glanced at her, leaning forward. Sorry, this is kind of a lot all at once. Yeah, kind of, the teenager leaned back in her seat, her eyes dark with unease. There was a long pause, then. But if the pharaoh's soul was trapped, how would he ever be able to return? Have you heard of the Book of the Dead? Akira's shoulders tensed slightly, almost imperceptibly. It sounds vaguely familiar. Can I say words today? No, that's always the answer. It's a book thousands of years old about the ancient Egyptians' idea of the afterlife, which goes into all sorts of things like the different gods that were associated with death and the underworld, and the nature of the soul. Long story short, if something went wrong with all the proper burial rituals, the soul of the deceased would go through something called the second death, where a part of their soul would disappear, then be reborn 3,000 years later. So the tomb keepers waited for those 3,000 years to be up. Then, has the pharaoh come back yet? Merrick nodded. Yeah, he did. Only 3 to 4 years ago. Wait, what? That recently? Uh-huh. But did you have all the Millennium items back then, too? If his soul was in this puzzle thing, were you there when... I didn't have the puzzle when it happened. Yugi did. Akira's eyes widened. What? But what does that mean? Did Yugi meet the pharaoh? Merrick smiled. He did more than meet the pharaoh. He and Yugi shared a mental link and even a body. Through the puzzle, Atem could use Yugi as his vessel. Akira frowned, looking a bit unsure about the idea. You're telling me Atem possessed Yugi? Yeah. You're awfully calm about it. Merrick nodded. I mean, I grew up around all this. The items and shadow magic. Wait, really? Yeah, I was a tomb keeper. Akira's gaze snapped towards him, turning so sharply Merrick swore he heard her neck crack. Her eyes were wide with something like awe. With something like, okay, gotcha. Oh shit, wow. Merrick ducked his head slightly, suddenly feeling uncomfortable. It's not a big deal, really. It's just the lineage I was born into. Yeah, but I don't know. That's kind of cool, to be protecting all this magic and secrets. Cool is definitely not the word, but okay. In a way, I guess, he choked out, trying to avoid going into what being a tomb keeper had really been like. Akira, sensing his discomfort, looked at him curiously for a moment before dropping the subject. She paused before saying, Can you tell me more about this pharaoh? Did you meet him? Did you ever meet him? I don't know. If you were a tomb keeper and this happened in your lifetime, then you probably met him, right? Do you know what he was like? Merrick blinked. She wasn't wrong, even if there was more to it than that. I mean, yeah, I did meet him. He's everything I'm not. He was everything you'd expect a pharaoh to be. Honorable, proud, protective of the people he cared about to a fault. Akira frowned. In that he'd die for them? Yeah, and that he'd kill you if you so much laid a finger on them. Oh, but he's not still here? Merrick shook his head. No, when he returned with his soul in the puzzle, he had no memories of who he was before. Once he got those memories back and learned his name, he was able to pass through to the Egyptian afterlife, where he belonged. Akira's eyes narrowed, dark with confusion as she stared intently into the trees. You mean he wanted to die? If he had the option to stay, why wouldn't he take it? Merrick blinked, surprised. I hadn't thought about that before. I suppose he had friends from his first life who were waiting for him in the afterlife, people he cared about who were already there. Still, she stared across the park for a few moments more before blinking the thought away. She looked back at Merrick, saying, "Also, with the Millennium items, what else do they do? Because you did something with a rod yesterday, but that wasn't a shadow game, was it?" No, you're right, it wasn't. But aside from starting shadow games, they all do something different. Something closer to what most people might think of as magic. There's the key, which let the owner see inside a person's soul room, which is like the manifestation of their ka? Their personality. Whoever owns the key can even redecorate the soul room, as it were, changing their personality or bending them to their will. Oh, is he going to explain all of them? Okay, maybe not. I'm not sure about that. Okay. Akira swallowed. That's concerning. Yep. Then there's the scales, which weighs people's souls against something called the feather of Ma'at. The heavier the soul, the more evil there is in a person. Whatever evil means objectively, anyway. Akira nodded mutely. Merrick went on. The fourth one is the ring, which allows the user to move people's souls between different objects and can act as a compass, pointing the owner towards whatever they're looking for. Also, it used to literally contain the soul of Satan and one other even bigger asshole. Yep. There's the eye, which allows the wielder to read minds and seal people's souls in different objects, and the necklace, which allows the user visions of the future and the past. He moved on from that one as quickly as he could, just in case Akira asked any questions which could relate to his vision from yesterday. And the one you saw yesterday is the Millennium Rod, which lets you control people's minds and levitate things. Akira blinked. Yikes. Her eyes round. Yikes. Merrick laughed. Yeah, it's a pretty good summary. That's why we keep them hidden. All these items are so powerful that even one of them falling into the wrong hands could be disastrous. She nodded, frowning. And the puzzle? What else does it do? Merrick hesitated. I'm not sure, actually. The Tomb Keepers didn't have it for centuries. If we ever knew, that knowledge was lost a long time ago. And Yugi never mentioned anything to me. Akira nodded. After a few moments, she frowned, saying, "You said that you could use the last one to do mind control?" "Yeah? Then why tell me any of this? Why not just make me forget I saw anything?" Merrick swallowed, meeting her gaze. He couldn't tell her the whole truth about the necklace and the vision, not when he didn't know what it meant. Also, telling her might spook her even more. He pinched the bridge of his nose. There was the other reason. It was the only way he could think of to approach this, but he'd be on very thin ice. Merrick, just do it, quickly, like a band-aid. Because I think it had something to do with Tadako's death. Akira froze. Her eyes darkened, narrowing, and she shrunk into her hoodie. Even without the presence of the rod in his backpack, Merrick would have been able to feel her mind working, trying to connect the dots, trying to make sense of it all. Her voice wavered slightly as she choked out a reply. How? Merrick hesitated. Well, it wouldn't be the first time the Millennium Items interfered with a Duel Monsters match. She took in a sharp breath. Okay, go on. Do you remember the Battle City tournament held by Seto Kaiba 2 years ago? Tanaka thought about participating, but he hated the anti rule. He didn't want to lose the cards he loved, nor did he want to take them from anyone else. Merrick nodded. It's probably just as well. In that tournament, 4 of the 8 finalists had Millennium items, and, well, things got messy. Half the finalists were hospitalized at one point or another, but it was able to be kept quiet because the whole thing took place on the blimp. They're just card games, she said, almost angrily staring into the empty air. Why were people getting hurt? Because the items were being used to start shadow games, the penalty games that were what put people's lives in danger. And you think that's what happened to Dodako, a penalty game? Merrick nodded. Akira was silent, almost glaring into the trees. She took a deep breath, then pinched the bridge of her nose. What the hell is this? Some kind of a shit for brains joke? Shit, I don't know. What the hell is... Ugh. What? My nose is doing weird things. I don't like it. Stop. I wish. Akira sighed. Sorry, I just... No, don't apologize. It's a lot. She nodded, her shoulders slackening slightly. Then suddenly she sat up straighter. Wait. Hmm? She turned to face him. You're one of the Battle City finalists. Tadako mentioned it. He was doing research on how Yugi had dueled against other opponents and what kind of strategy he used. He tried to look into Battle City since he knew Yugi won, but the only thing he could find out about your duel with him was your name. Did that have something to do with Millennium Items? What exactly happened? Merrick swallowed nervously. Fuck. This is not where this conversation was supposed to go. Not that duel. Not him. Nope. Make an excuse. Create a diversion. Kaiba was careful to keep exactly what happened during Battle City under wraps, because with all the shadow games, no one would participate in Kaiba Corp tournaments if they thought they might get hurt. That's why Tadako probably couldn't find anything on it, he said quickly. Also, I super don't want to talk about everything else that was wrong with that duel. Please don't ask some kind of follow-up. But what exactly was Kaiba trying to hide? Fuck. He swallowed, searching for anything to say except for my psychotic other self whose favorite hobby is stabbing people to death, people getting injured. Merrick. Merrick turned his head away, refusing to look at her. No, we're not going there, he swallowed. I can't tell you. It was hidden for a reason. But if I told you it all has nothing to do with Tadaka, would you be satisfied? He snapped, his voice cracking. Akira flinched. There was a long pause. Then quietly, I guess. Thank you, he said stiffly. Don't mention it. I'm just trying to make sense of all this. The Millennium Items, Shadow Games, Tadako. Yeah, of course. I don't like to think about what happened with me during Battle City. She nodded, her eyes round with concern, but didn't press the subject. Sure, I'm sorry I asked, really. Don't worry about it, you didn't know. Can I ask one thing, though? I can't promise you'll get an answer. Okay, it's just, no one actually died in Battle City, did they? Merrick swallowed. There was that one person, but Akira didn't need to know about him. He was gone now. Yikes. No, but there were a few close calls. The teenager nodded, swallowing. Right, okay. She glanced at him, smiling softly. That's good, at least. From what I can tell, the people who were part of that tournament must have been alright. Merrick laughed awkwardly. Nope. All of us are traumatized pieces of trash and belong in the garbage can. Maybe? Akira grinned, elbowing him in the ribs. It's a compliment, stupid. I'm saying I'm glad you're not dead. Oh, thanks? You're welcome, she laughed, her dark eyes shining. She sat back in her seat, glancing at him. By the way, did you maybe have the Millennium Items with you? Merrick blinked. Yeah, actually, you wanted to see them? She nodded sheepishly. If that's okay. Merrick glanced around, checking no one else was there to see them, then removed his backpack and unzipped it. The Millennium Items glittered in the Millennium Items glittered in the sunlight. He took out the rod, since it was on top, and then reached for anything but the necklace. Usually it would be the safest one to show someone else, but given the vision yesterday, he didn't want to take any chances with it. What is happening? He grabbed the key instead, passing it to Akira. There you go, that's one of them. Akira took it, holding it delicately, as though it might break in her hands. It's heavier than it looks. Yeah, it's made of solid gold. Shit, she said, her eyes widening. Guess that's one more reason why you'd want tomb keepers to protect them. Merrick nodded, turning the rod over in his hands, making sure to hold it so his hand covered the top of the blade's sheath, so that Akira wouldn't realize that the rod had two parts to it. Didn't feel like explaining that one. Can I see the puzzle too? Hmm? Akira smiled apologetically. I mean, it held the soul of a pharaoh, and that's pretty cool, right? I don't know. I'm just curious about it, if that's okay. No, it's fine. Here, he reached in the backpack, giving Momotaro a quick pat with his free hand, pulling the puzzle out. Uh, Akira took it carefully, holding it in both hands. It doesn't have any souls in it now, though, does it? Not to my knowledge, Merrick grinned. How can you tell? Well, you can't, Merrick admitted, not just by holding it, and not even by putting it on, since if some kind of spirit was in there, it could choose not to show itself unless you force it somehow. But there's no reason why there would be one there now. Akira nodded, eyeing the puzzle curiously. I don't know. It feels like it has so much energy, I guess. Merrick blinked, impressed. You can feel that? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, maybe you get that feeling holding any ancient object, or maybe it's just awe. No, they do radiate a kind of energy, Merrick said. I've always thought it feels the same as shadow magic, but weaker. Not everyone can feel it, though. Akira frowned. I don't know. If that's the case, I'm probably imagining it. It is faint. She placed the puzzle in her lap, her eyes narrowed, thinking again. So, with Tadako. Yeah? If only people with the Millennium Item can start shadow games, and the duel with Tadako and Yugi really was a shadow game, wouldn't it just be a matter of working out who had which items at the time of the duel? Whoever had the items in the duel must have done it, right? Merrick swallowed. I had all the 7 Millennium Items when the duel happened, and I still do. She blinked. Oh, right, sorry. Wait, then how could... I don't know, he admitted. I don't know how someone else could have started a shadow game without them, but there was an incident a year ago involving a so-called 8th Millennium Item, so there could be more. Or someone might have found a way to start a shadow game through some other means. Akira frowned, tracing the edges of the puzzle pieces with her thumb. What happened last year? Merrick paused. I don't know much about it, to be honest. I wasn't in Japan at the time when it happened. You'd be a better person to ask. She nodded, deep in thought. Was that when Kaiba Corp released its new duel disc? Muto and Kaiba dueled, but there was some kind of blackout across Domino City, but no one knew exactly what happened. She broke off suddenly, flinching away from something invisible, her eyes wide. Slightly glazed over. Merrick adjusted his grip on the rod. Akira? The young girl was completely still for a few more moments. Then she blinked, pitching forward slightly, her breath coming quickly. Merrick frowned. Are you okay? Akira hesitated, looking at the puzzle, and then at him, her eyes wide with alarm. Fine, she said shakily. What just happened? Nothing, I don't think. She handed the puzzle back to him, not quite meeting his eye. Merrick narrowed his eyes skeptically. Are you sure? Yep. Merrick hesitated. He knew she wasn't telling him something, but he didn't want to accuse her of lying. All right, but if something... It's fine, it's nothing. Goodness gracious. What the fuck? Why, though? Sorry, I'm being distracted, but I don't... Motherfucker, dude. I don't... Anyways, sorry, getting distracted by some weird shit happening on my phone. Anyways. Okay, okay. Merrick bit his lip, saying nothing. Akira swallowed. Right, well, she trailed off, her gaze sincere, solemn. Thank you for telling me about all this. Really, I know it's a big deal. Merrick shrugged, pushing his hands into his pockets, putting whatever had just happened aside. I couldn't not tell you. You deserve some answers. Besides, if anything happened to Ishizu or Rashid, I'd want to know why. I really appreciate it, but I have just one more question. Yeah. Why were you at the funeral yesterday? Merrick blinked, only just realizing he hadn't explained that. Oh, well, I'm actually hoping to work out exactly what happened a few days ago, how the duel became a shadow game. Who was behind that? Ikira's eyes widened, bright with something like hope. Really? You'll tell me if you find anything, won't you? Merrick nodded. Yeah, of course. I asked for your phone number, but he trailed off looking guiltily. It was his fault. Akira didn't have a phone at the moment. Oh, right. Don't worry about that. Here, my number should be the same one once I get a new phone. I'll write it down for you. After typing her phone number into Merrick's notes, Akira gave Momotaro's leash a gentle tug, signaling to the dog they were about to leave. Merrick gave Momo one last pat, and Akira nodded politely to Merrick, smiling, although her eyes were filled with unease. It was good to talk to you. Thank you again for everything. I guess I'll see you again soon. An image of a young girl in a courtyard flashed in his mind, and he nodded. Yeah, I'm sure you will. Jeez. Okay. Takeda Satoshi sat in a large office chair, his feet resting on the edge of the seat, his chin on his knees as he stared at his computer, the blueness of his eyes intensified by the blue light. He'd been in this position for hours, and he was beginning to feel stiff. His back a little sore, but he hardly noticed. He was focused on one thing. Yugi Muto. He hadn't been on the police force for long, but it had been long enough for him to pick up on a certain inside joke that had pervaded the force for years. 4 years ago, there had been a string of incidents that no one could explain. Murders, arson, and other hospitalizations. And every time, this kid with ridiculous hair had been nearby. Impossible to miss on the security footage. Muto seemed to have made a habit of hanging out around the places where these incidents occurred, up to a day before they happened. Every time the investigators failed to find any rhyme or reason behind what exactly happened and why, once they were sure to reach a dead end, they would joke that the kid with the red hair did it, and then go out for drinks. And now the kid with the hair was at the center of another murder. From the moment he heard about the case, Takeda had been suspicious of Muto, hair notwithstanding. Surely it wasn't just coincidence that Kyoru Tadako had died the moment he lost the duel. But surely it wasn't also coincidence that Muto, given his proximity to these unsolved cases from 4 years ago, had been opposite Tadako in the dueling stadium. So he'd gone back, and he studied the footage from the unsolved cases carefully. He'd been shocked to find there were almost no gaps in the footage. Somehow, perhaps by coincidence, Kaiba Corp's cameras always seemed to be trained on Muto at every possible moment. Except for when the incidents actually occurred. He had a half a mind to query Kaiba Corp about this, but given Seto Kaiba's current rumored condition, he wasn't sure he'd get very far. He'd gone over Inspector Nakamura's notes from that time, trying to find patterns, connections, clues, but so far it had amounted to nothing, only confirming that Muto was always present before everything went wrong. Just like Tadako. He took in a sharp breath, pinching the bridge of his nose. Don't think about him. It'll only make it hurt more. Takeda, you're still here. Ah! The young detective jumped as someone else entered the room, dropping a pen he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He spun around in his chair to see Yugioh, another new recruit, coming in with 2 mugs of coffee. The other police officer was part of a different division of the force, but since they'd started at the same time, the pair had formed a kind of alliance that wasn't quite friendship, but was more than being mere acquaintances. Somewhat resembling both a tree and a boulder, Yugioh was half a head taller than Takeda, twice as broad, 4 times as strong, and an imitating figure no matter how hard you looked at it. Aside from that, Takeda had grown used to the silence of the office late at night, and he hadn't expecting someone else to come in. Jesus Christ, Yugioh, you scared me. Yugioh smirked. No kidding. Can't believe you're still here, though. Everyone else went home hours ago. What are you doing anyway? I could say the same to you, Takeda retorted. Yugioh sighed, looking put out. My boss asked me to stay behind and clean up all the mess in the lobby. Some idiots decided to have a duel in there, holograms and all. In a space as small as that, I don't know what they expected to happen. Takeda frowned. Surely the holograms didn't make a mess. They don't have any physical substance. No, but the duelist got a little bit too excited and started yelling and jumping around. Ah. Yugioh shrugged, setting the second cup of coffee down next to Takeda. Anyway, what's yours? With 6 sugars, you heathen. Yugioh laughed, clapping on the back so hard Takeda felt his heart leap in his throat. Thanks, Yugioh. He picked up the coffee, and Yugioh pulled up a chair next to him, seeing Muto's face on the screen. His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. So you've got the Kyoru case, huh? Yeah, I'm part of the team. Ishio nodded, leaning in closer, the examining the image. Yugi seems younger there. Takeda blinked in surprise at Ishio calling Muto Yugi. Yeah, that's right. How would you know? He and I were in high school together. Takeda cocked his head to one side. All through high school? Just about, yeah. This might seem a little odd, but can I ask you about some stuff? Nothing personal. Don't worry. Do you remember a chain of odd occurrences happening around your school 4 years ago? Lucia paused, and his gaze darkened, and he laughed. Define remember. Remember people talking about everything that happened, but there are some gaps in my memory personally. Takeda frowned. What? Yoshio smirked, leaning back in his chair, sipping his own coffee. What do you know about these occurrences? There was an escaped criminal who got set on fire, but no one in the restaurant where it happened could see exactly how. There was another fire near some docks where 3 people were severely burned, but no one could discern the cause. Another fire was started when a barbecue grill exploded, hospitalizing yet another student. A series of people slipped into a coma for no apparent reason, including a gym teacher at Domino High, and an archaeologist who'd been digging up the tomb of Haremheb died as well, and this was all in a matter of weeks, he said. Ushio blinked. I guess that's most of the ones that would have reached the police, but I was caught up in all of that too. What, you were? Yeah, right at the start. Apparently I started hallucinating right outside the school. It was just as all of this was beginning, and it lasted for around 2 weeks, I think. Was Yugi involved? Takeda asked, sitting up straighter. I mean, did anything about him seem odd to you around that time? Lucia shook his head. I'm sorry, like I said, I don't actually remember. The day before and the weeks after I was hallucinating are a complete blank for me. Tadeka slumped back in his chair, disappointed. That's too bad. I'm wondering whether these instances from 4 years ago could be connected to Kyoru's case. Really? Why? Because Muto was always there. It's a meme in my department because his hair is so ridiculous. You can't miss him in the security footage. Every single time something happened, he was right there before it did. It's as if all the cameras go haywire as soon as whatever happened actually starts playing out. Actually, I do remember one thing. Before all those odd things occurred, Yugi didn't wear that stupid pendant thing around his neck. It always looked ridiculously heavy, so I never knew why he bothered. But it also looked as if it might have been made of solid gold or something, so maybe he thought it was always on him, it wouldn't get stolen. He waved a hand dismissively, taking another sip out of his mug. It was probably really old, too, at any rate. I don't remember him wearing it before all of that. Takeda frowned. Well, that does say Tadeka. That's why I thought it was weird. It's Takeda. Oh, that's weird. Okay, anyways. I'll think about that. Thanks, Ishio. No worries, he replied, standing up, just about tripling in height as he did. I'm heading home. You don't want to lift, do you? No, I'm staying here. All right, well, don't work yourself to death, the taller man said, heading for the door. Takeda spun around his chair, smiling wryly. Is that a challenge? Yugioh rolled his eyes, grunting in farewell. Takeda had waited until he closed the door and then opened up the still of Muto again, properly noticing the strange pendant around his neck for the first time. He'd never seen anything like it before, but he recognized the eye in the front of it as something vaguely Egyptian. The eye of Anubis, or Horus, or Ra, one of them. I don't think that's necessarily it. Is it? I don't know. Anyways. He zoomed in, trying to get a better look at the pendant, his eyebrows shooting upwards as he noticed cracks all through it, regular, even cracks, like puzzle pieces. Fitting. This pendant was a puzzle which he was more than willing to solve. Muto was a puzzle. Tadaka was a puzzle. Taking a sip of his coffee, he narrowed his eyes and opened a new tab. I will find out who killed you, Chako. I will find out who they are, and I will bring them to justice. I promise. Oh, Jesus. That was quite a long chapter, I think. So, it's probably about normal length, but it's, quite long for me. Anyways, that's where we're gonna have to end. Next time, we'll have another episode. Where is it, the... Oh. Next time, we'll likely have another episode of Unearthed Arcana, because it is a very long story, as I probably said before. But after that, we'll come back with Chapter 6 of Not Guilty by BrightBriar, which this is a quite good story. With all the Yugioh stuff, it's quite good. It's bringing me back to when I actually wanted to watch the Yu-Gi-Oh anime and really cared about this. So it's quite nice. Yeah, I gotta end this because I have things to do, and yeah, I'm not liking it too much, but I gotta get shit done, obviously. Yay.